It's March, so we had to bring on someone who knows probably more about college basketball than most writers across the country. Alex Squadron, writer for Hoops HQ, and a guy that me and Brendan know a little bit from some travels to Africa this summer. Alex is here to talk about Maryland's postseason chances, what he kind of thinks about the Terps, that type of thing. So, Alex, thanks for hopping on.
I appreciate you guys having me. It's good to see you again.
Well, let's get right into it. Kind of give us your impression of Maryland here as they head into March. We obviously know they're a 2 seed in the Big Ten, kind of sitting right around that 4-5 line. As they go into the Big Ten tournament, what is kind of your expectations for where they could land and what you're looking for this team over the next couple weeks?
My expectations for this team, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, I put out kind of a preview of the conference tournaments, and I actually picked Maryland to win the Big Ten tournament. I really like this team. I mean, I just think the build of it, I actually went to College Park. I saw both of you guys there and sat down with Coach Kevin Willard, and he just kind of walked me through how they built this team and kind of the turnaround that the program's had overall. And look, the pieces just fit. I mean, having two big guys like Queen and Reese inside and then surrounding them with, elite shooters, that formula has just worked. Now, obviously, there are questions about the depth. I saw, Sam, you wrote something about that. And it certainly is a concern going forward. I think the fact that this team got the double bye so they don't have to play, four games or 5 games is obviously going to help. And I think you can start to raise questions if they play a really physical, closely contested game or something goes to overtime. But I think at least, coming off a rest, this team has what it takes to kind of go all the way in the Big Ten. And then, once you get to the NCAA tournament, so much of that is matchup based. So, what do you guys think of just that depth issue? Is that something that is going to be a big problem going forward?
I think that in a way, the depth is a little overblown. I think if you look, a very similar team and a team that I've kind of looked at is the 2014 Wisconsin team, actually, that went to the Final Four. And if you look at their roster, they didn't really have a ton of bench options. It was pretty much the starters which they rode pretty heavily, and then basically a couple of bench guys after it. But I think that especially in tournament time, once kind of you get into these games that are extended, they're so long, right? You have weeks off in between. I think that the depth has actually kind of shrunk. Coaches already shrink their rotations in March. So I think that if you just have a couple reliable options, that's what matters. My concern is less about the fatigue when it comes to the depth and more the NCAA tournament is reffed way differently than the Big Ten, right? We all know that the Big Ten is probably the most physical league in the conference or in the country. And I think that if Queen or Reese were to pick up 2 quick fouls early on in a game, extended Jordan Geronimo or Tafari Kapari minutes don't exactly scream optimism for Kevin Willard and his team. But I do think that when it comes down to it, I don't think the reason Maryland's going to lose a game in March is because they just don't have any depth. That's not what I would say would be kind of my number one concern with them, actually.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the foul trouble is the thing that would concern me the most. Julian Reese has been slightly better this year, but I feel like just going back the past 3 years, any game where he gets in foul trouble early, Maryland's been able to survive it. They survived it in the Michigan game. But those games just have to scare you. And obviously it's win or go home. And so if he gets into foul trouble early and Derik Queen's not having a good game, it's just really hard for them to win. So I think if the team sits out of foul trouble, then those guys are clearly healthy enough to play the minutes they've been playing. Rodney Rice has been playing, upwards of 35 minutes a game for pretty much the back half of the season. So they definitely have the guys to do it, but that would definitely be the biggest concern is fouls. Alex, you sat down with Derik Queen, I believe, when you came to Maryland. What were your overall reactions to him? He obviously just got named Big Ten Freshman of the Year today.
I mean, just as a player, I could not be more impressed with him. It definitely has surpassed kind of my expectations. The guy is just so skilled. I mean, what he's able to do around the basket, his footwork, his moves. I've gotten the chance to talk to some NBA scouts about him as well. And obviously there are some question marks about just, he's an interesting prospect. He's a little bit different, can't really shoot from the outside. Maybe some concerns on defense. He's not really a rim protector, but the talent is just so undeniable that I think he's climbed draft boards just because he is that good and that polished for someone his age. It's pretty astonishing. So, he's been the key. I mean, he's really been the key. Obviously, It's like a completely new team and the build is different, but this team goes as Queen goes. And he's been insane. So I've been very impressed.
Do you kind of have any good stories? I know you've traveled across the country, but in terms of personalities, I know you talk mostly to Derik and Kevin Willard. Where do those two kind of rank in your people that you've talked to? Is there any interesting anecdotes or stories you were able to pull out of them? And where do they kind of stack up compared to some of your other interviews you've done this year?
They were great. Everyone was great there. I really enjoyed my visit. Queen's a little bit quieter. I'm sure you guys have covered him too. Willard was great. I mean, I sat with him for like 30 minutes and he gave me a bunch. I think his honesty about just the issues from last year and what kind of sparked the turnaround was refreshing to kind of hear him just kind of own up to the mistakes that he made in terms of just like what it takes to succeed in the modern era of college basketball. The program just didn't raise enough NIL, didn't hit the transfer portal hard enough, didn't recruit necessarily the right guys. They were bringing in freshmen, not transfers. And as we've seen this season, a big key is just bringing in, experienced players that fit the system, fit the players that you already have. And credit to Willard, he did that. I mean, he knew he had Reese coming back. He knew he had Queen, who just is as talented as a freshman as you can get. So that's two big guys. And to give those guys space, you need shooting. And they did not have shooting in the past. And so he did that, bringing in Gillespie, Miguel, Rice. I mean, these are guys who very clearly were there to fit a role, and they've all played their roles perfectly. And that's really what I love about this team. Again, those pieces just fit. It just makes sense. You got two guys shooting over 40% from three. I think Rice has got to be 36. I think as a team, they're like 37. So they're, in the top 50 in the country. And I think a big key has been, they've been really good defensively. This is a top 10 defense on KenPom. And when you're doing that, and then you have, the potential to kind of explode offensively with a talent like Queen and then shooters, you kind of have all the ingredients. Like I said, I really like this team and like what Willard did to put it together.
In terms of, you said that they're your pick to win the Big Ten championship. I want to ask kind of, as when we get to Selection Sunday next week, what would you say is kind of the ceiling, the median, and the floor for where Maryland could end up?
I'm not a bracketologist. I don't know much about just kind of, how the committee makes these decisions. My understanding is that the conference tournaments, have obviously some play in it. So we'll see what happens. Right now, I think our bracketologist has them on Hoops HQ as a 4 seed. That to me seems like where they're at. I think it could change, obviously, if they manage to win the Big Ten. And especially if they, end up playing Michigan State. But I'm not sure kind of where their exact ceiling is and how far they could fall. I mean, I don't imagine with the resume they put together, especially, I feel like over the past month, they've only lost once. They lost on a miracle half-court shot. With how well this team has been playing into the tournament, I can't imagine that, they could fall, really drastically. They're going to play a good team in the quarterfinals of the Big Ten. So, I think they're in a pretty good position, as good a position as you could hope for.
I mean, we know this Maryland team is going to be competitive as far as they go. You mentioned it, the buzzer beater. Their last 3 losses have all been on the last possession, and they haven't played a non-competitive game all year in my eyes. With that being said, aside from seeding in the tournament, what are your thoughts on how far Maryland could go in the tournament?
I'm not just saying this because I'm all with you guys. I really like this team. I do. Now, again, I think it all changes if, look, they can't afford any injuries because obviously the depth is an issue. If they're playing these really physical, tough games, obviously there is sometimes that quick turnaround. You can't really afford slow starts in March Madness. You got to kind of be ready to go. So, but again, I think I've said before, I think this team's has Final Four potential. They have the talent to do it. They have all the pieces to do it. When you're looking, at teams that could potentially make a run, I'm looking at obviously the resume, but also are they good on both sides of the ball? This team has been great. They're a top 35 offense, a top 10 defense on KenPom. Obviously, they put up a ton of points. do you have just like the talent to do it? They have it, and they have the coaching. I just think that they have all the ingredients. Matchups, obviously, it that dictates a lot of it, but just like I feel comfortable saying that they can go on a run to San Antonio, and definitely rip off a couple wins in the NCAA tournament.
On the flip side, what type of team would you kind of envision giving Maryland some trouble? And are there any examples that you have as kind of an archetype or a unit that could really kind of present some issues for them?
It's tough. I think I just agree with Brendan. Like they've played everybody tough, and I think the issue is like what Brendan said. If there's a team that they run up against that has a kind of go-to big or bigs inside that can get their bigs in foul trouble, you can't really afford for Queen to pick up three or Reese to pick up three. Those, that hurts you a lot. So if they're going against a team that is kind of aggressive, dominant inside, and can force those guys to pick up a few early fouls, that would be the biggest issue I'm looking at. But again, I just think the fact that they've been able to play with, against any kind of opponent they face in the Big Ten, a lot of different kind of styles and different teams in the Big Ten, and they put up a fight against everybody. Those losses that they've had, going back to the Ohio State game, that game, that's a banked in three, right? And then Holloman shot. I mean, you guys were there, right? I don't even know what to say about that.
Northwestern at the buzzer.
I know that was they really didn't have Northwestern right in overtime at the buzzer. I mean, the Holloman shot, I know that they were kind of a disaster offensively that game. But yeah, I just think the fact that they have been able to play to different styles, play against different opponents. The issue I would see coming up is like, is there a super aggressive team that can get some of these guys in foul trouble early and force them to go to the bench?
Who would you say, as somebody that covers the Big Ten pretty extensively, you obviously have talked about how well you like Maryland, but the Big Ten has struggled recently, of course. Do you think that this year has a chance to kind of reverse that trend? I mean, no national champion since Michigan State in a long time. I know Purdue made it last year, but in terms of kind of the overall success of the conference, it's been down. How do you see the conference this year, and do you expect a kind of a rebound in that regard?
Yeah, I feel like we've almost already seen it. I mean, there's just so many teams in the conference that I could see competing and going on runs. Whether it's Michigan State, whether it's Maryland. I think Sam, you and I were texting, and I was vouching for Wisconsin as a big threat as well. I like Wisconsin. There's just a lot of teams that are dangerous, that look capable of going on runs, that are loaded with talent. What Michigan State has done is obviously incredible, and nobody really saw that coming. So I think the fact that some of these teams, Maryland included, have just surpassed expectations this year. The Big Ten definitely already is looking like like they've kind of reversed this trend. And then, I think that there's a handful of teams that can, go on a run. And obviously if that happens, that really changes the narrative. So, I like a lot of these teams, but definitely the Big Ten has been, I think, better than advertised this year.
It definitely helps, that Big Ten now has UCLA and Oregon, two teams who have kind of been known to make runs in the NCAA tournament. I want to talk a little bit more about your work, Alex. You've had a chance now to dive in super deep, just specifically on college basketball. What has been your favorite article or team you've got a chance to really dive in on this year?
Good question. We were talking before we started recording about the article I did on John Fanta. That was a lot of fun. Obviously, he's the college basketball guy. I met up with him in New York. We had lunch together. I followed him kind of for a game. He's just awesome. I mean, his energy and passion for college basketball is really contagious. And as somebody who's obviously working in the field, just what a joy to be around that, and then to work on that story. And I do love to tell the stories that, typically aren't told. And I don't think Fanta's gotten his shine yet. So that was really fun. The only other one I'll mention is actually one of my first articles for Hoops HQ was I got assigned to follow Rick Pitino for a day during the preseason. So this is when nobody knew how good St. John's was. I remember just like talking to Patino and him being like, yeah, I think we're pretty good this year. And, at the time, I think they're projected to finish like 5th in the Big East. And just being with him for a full day. That day actually started with me meeting him at Equinox at 5:30 in the morning to work out. Because the guy is a machine. I mean, the like premise of the article was he's 72 years old. I'm 29 and I could like barely keep up with him. It was ridiculous. He worked out at 5:30 in the morning. We went from the workout to a like 2-mile hike. Basically, we hiked through like the woods by his house with his dog. I remember like checking my steps at like 8 a.m. and I had walked more than I had walked the previous day by 8 a.m. So that was amazing. And basically to be around Patino for a full day and like pick his brain, and then watch practice, watch, player development sessions, you can see why this guy is such a legend and is so successful. He's so locked in, so meticulous, so dedicated. He's got a very singular focus on winning. And you see kind of the results of that. So to look back on that now, seeing where St. John's is, pretty cool to say that I was like there at, in preseason with Patino, before all this happened.
Yeah, you were. I mean, some are saying that Alex Squadron is the reason that there's a documentary.
Hey, man, you said it. I don't know. I mean, it seems like maybe I sparked the success a little bit. I don't
know. I hate to bring it back to Maryland, but you've seen a lot of really good teams this year, obviously traveling around. I want to ask, is there a combination of big men, Reese and Queen, obviously, that stack up to them across the country? I mean, obviously you got teams like Duke with Kaman and Malik Brown, and then Cooper, obviously. There's some really good ones out there. Texas A&M has a really nice group of big, but I was just wondering if you have seen a more talented and a kind of a good diversity of skill sets, I guess, between Reese's versatility or Queen's versatility and Reese's veteranship. How do they stack up compared to other front courts?
Right up there near the top. I mean, the one that comes to mind is Wolf and Golden in Michigan. But again, I think it's such a unique pairing because in a way with Maryland, you wouldn't necessarily think it would work.
Right. That's what's fascinating is like.
Agreed. I mean, I think I pressed Willard on this a little bit. Like, why are they able to play so well together? Look, neither of them are 3-point shooters. They're kind of bruising. I mean, there's some finesse to Queen's game, but they like to take it inside. They like to be in the paint.
I mean, he said in the preseason he was planning on playing them together like for 15 minutes a game.
Staggering, right?
And now they play basically 28 minutes a game.
I think, and what he said to me was that it's really a credit to them kind of figuring out how to fit together and where guys like the ball. I mean, it does start with Reese and how kind of smart he is as a player, and obviously him being a veteran, having that leadership. I feel like the whole team kind of follows his lead at this point. But the way that they're able to kind of fit together and feed each other in the right spots, again, you're right. You wouldn't think that it would work. I mean, at least Wolf with Golden Wolf can shoot, and is a little bit more of a, I don't know. Queen is also versatile, but it's a different kind of versatility with Wolf. I just think that the fact that it's working, they're as like kind of unique a combo as you'll find. And the fact that they're able to work well together is a credit to just like them figuring it out and also just how good they are. I mean, you just can't really slow down, those two guys. They're just both so talented. So,
yeah. Well, Alex just broke down everything Maryland related. We do that too. So you guys get all your Maryland basketball content. Alex does great work over at Hoops HQ as they head over into March. You want to plug your stuff, Squad?
Nah, I want to plug your guys' stuff. You guys all need to listen to this. I know you're listening to it now, but you guys have been crushing it. I've been following your stuff, obviously, especially when I was going down to College Park. I listened to some pods and I was like, man, these guys are awesome. So, I mean, check out Hoops HQ. If you guys subscribe to Hoops HQ for sure. We're definitely kind of ramping things up for March Madness. We've got a bracketologist who's got everything covered. I'll be traveling a bunch for the tournament, so definitely tap in with us. But yeah, shout out to you guys because you guys are crushing it and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Alex. You can get a Hoops HQ membership for $20. I promise you that will be well worth your time. You probably will win it back with your bracket, honestly.
100%. Yeah, $20, man. That's like one beer at Madison Square Garden. $20. That's easy.
And for our local audience, that's like one drink in DC. So perfect.
There you go.
For hopping on, Alex. We appreciate your time and good luck with March Madness.
Thank you. Same to you guys.